July 30th, 1945. The war in the Pacific was almost over. The USS Indianapolis had just completed one of the most secret missions of World War II, delivering critical components for the atomic bomb. The crew believed the hardest part was behind them. They were wrong. Just after midnight, a Japanese submarine fired 2 torpedoes. 12 minutes later, the massive warship slipped beneath the Philippine Sea. Nearly 900 American sailors were thrown into dark, oil-covered water. No distress signal reached help. No rescue was coming. At sunrise, something else arrived instead. Dorsal fins began circling. What followed became the most horrifying shark attack in U.S. naval history. And for 5 days, the ocean turned into a battlefield no one was prepared for. The men believed rescue would arrive within hours. After all, this was the United States Navy. But no one even knew they were missing. No SOS was properly received. No escort had been assigned. No one tracked their arrival. Hundreds of sailors floated in scattered groups, clinging to life jackets, debris, and each other. The sun burned their skin by day. The salt water tore it open by night. Dehydration drove some men to drink the ocean. Hallucinations began. And then the sharks started testing the water. At first, it was one attack, then another. The splashes grew closer, the screams got shorter. The Philippine Sea wasn't just deep, it was hunting. By the second day, the sharks were no longer circling. They were selecting. Survivors later said the predators moved with terrifying precision, bumping a sailor once, then returning at full speed. Men were pulled under without warning. The water would explode in red, then go quiet again. Some groups tried to stay perfectly still, believing movement attracted attacks. Others kicked and screamed, trying to fight creatures built for this exact environment. Makos, oceanic whitetips, fast, relentless. The weakest were targeted first. Injured men, alone men, the ones who drifted too far from the cluster. Shipmates locked arms to look bigger. They prayed out loud. They promised each other they would see home again. But the sharks kept coming. And as night fell again, something even worse began to happen. The men started turning on each other. By the third night, the ocean wasn't the only enemy. Exhaustion shattered discipline. Thirst warped judgment. Some sailors swore they saw ships on the horizon. Others claimed fresh water was floating nearby. A few men drifted away chasing hallucinations and were never seen again. Oil from the sunken ship coated their mouths and eyes. Skin peeled in strips from salt burns. Sharks attacked mostly at dawn and dusk. The splashes became routine. Groups grew smaller. Officers tried to keep order, reminding them they were U.S. Navy, reminding them Americans do not quit. But hope was thinning faster than the life jackets. By the fourth morning, hundreds were gone. And still, no one on land realized nearly 900 sailors were fighting to survive in open water. On the fifth day, a U.S. Navy patrol plane was flying a routine mission over the Philippine Sea. It wasn't searching for survivors. It wasn't even looking for wreckage. Then the pilot noticed something strange in the water. At first he thought it was debris. Then he realized it was men. Hundreds of tiny figures waving weakly, oil-stained, sunburned, barely alive. He circled once. What he saw would haunt him forever. Bodies floating, sharks still moving between them. He immediately radioed for help. Rescue planes and ships rushed toward the coordinates. One pilot made a decision that broke protocol. He landed his aircraft directly on the open ocean. The swells were violent. The risk was extreme, but leaving them there was worse. And for the first time in 5 days, help was finally coming. More than 500 Americans were lost to exposure, dehydration, and relentless shark attacks. It became the deadliest shark disaster in U.S. history. But the nightmare didn't end with rescue. Instead of immediate honor, there was blame. The Navy needed accountability, and one man became the target: Captain Charles McVay. He was court-martialed for failing to zigzag, a maneuver believed to reduce submarine risk. Many argued it wouldn't have changed anything. Decades later, Congress would finally clear his name. But the question still echoes through history. Was this tragedy caused by enemy torpedoes, or by failures much closer to home? When the survivors returned home, they expected the nation to mourn with them. Instead, the Navy put their captain on trial. Charles B. McVay III was accused of failing to zigzag the ship, a defensive pattern meant to confuse submarines. But here's what many didn't know. Even the Japanese submarine commander later testified that zigzagging would not have saved the ship. Still, McVay was convicted. He became the only U.S. Navy captain court-martialed for losing a ship to enemy action in World War II. Families of the fallen blamed him. Hate mail followed him for years. The weight never lifted. In 1968, overwhelmed by guilt and public pressure, McVay took his own life. For decades, the story felt unfinished, until a group of students decided to reopen the case, and what they uncovered forced the United States Congress to act. In the 1990s, a middle school student named Hunter Scott began researching the USS Indianapolis for a history project. What started as homework turned into something bigger. He interviewed survivors, he studied naval records, he questioned the court-martial. The evidence pointed to communication failures, not cowardice. His research reached Washington. In 2000, the United States Congress passed a resolution clearing Captain McVay's name. The U.S. Navy formally exonerated him soon after. It had taken 55 years. For the survivors, it wasn't just about justice. It was about honor, about correcting a story that had haunted them since 1945. But even with his name restored, the ocean still holds the wreck. And the memories of the night America's sailors faced something far worse than enemy fire. For decades, the USS Indianapolis rested somewhere in the vast Philippine Sea. No one knew exactly where. The ocean had swallowed the evidence. Then, in 2017, a civilian research team funded by Paul Allen located the wreck nearly 18,000 feet below the surface. The ship was found remarkably intact. Her name still visible on the stern, silent, undisturbed. A steel tomb for the hundreds who never came home. For the families, it brought closure. For historians, confirmation. And for the nation, a reminder. This wasn't just a shark story. It was a story of sacrifice, miscommunication, survival, and delayed justice. But one final question still lingers. Could this disaster have been prevented? Or was it fate written the moment those torpedoes were fired? The USS Indianapolis wasn't just another warship. She had delivered parts of the atomic bomb that would soon change the world. Days later, atomic bombing of Hiroshima would mark a turning point in World War II. But before that history was written, nearly 900 American sailors were left alone in open water. No escort, no tracking, no rescue for 5 days. They fought sunburn, madness, dehydration, and sharks. Only 316 came home. The rest remained part of the sea's silence. Today, the story of the USS Indianapolis stands as a warning about wartime secrecy, about human error, about how quickly heroes can be blamed. But here's what still unsettles historians. If that patrol plane had flown a slightly different path, would anyone have survived at all? And how many other stories like this are still waiting beneath the ocean?